The following illustration is meant to provide a visual so that it can better help women understand their menstrual cycle. Keep in mind that this illustration is based on a 28-day cycle. So if your cycle is less than 28 days or more than 28 days, you may need to make some adjustments. Hello and welcome back to Nurse Onyi Teaches. My name is Onyi. If this is your first time here, you are most welcome. If you are a person who is interested in maternity-centered topics, make sure you hit the subscribe button and don't fail to turn on your notification bell, because that is how you are made aware of every time a new video is uploaded. Now, through the Facebook page, many women who would love to have their own children have reached out to me, asking me to help them better understand menstruation and ovulation. So in today's video, I am going to cover why it is important to track your cycle, a brief explanation of the menstrual cycle, what ovulation is and what a fertile window is, some of the factors that may affect a woman's menstruation and ovulation, and then the things that a woman should report to her doctor. Make sure that you are communicating with your healthcare provider and do not use this as your own diagnostic tool or medical advice. Without further ado, let's jump right in. I want to go ahead and say that a woman is born with every egg that she will ever make or need. Those eggs sit dormant in the ovaries until a woman hits puberty. Once you hit puberty, your body begins to release hormones that stimulate the maturity and release of those eggs in hope of being fertilized. Now, once an egg is being stimulated, the uterus is simultaneously working to create a lining that would be very helpful so that when the egg is fertilized, it has somewhere to implant and begin to develop into a baby. If that egg that is released does not get fertilized within that window of opportunity, then the egg itself will begin to disintegrate and the uterus will shed its lining, and that is what is known as menstruation. That mixture of tissue with the egg that is shed and blood is what a woman will see. Now, menstruation comes in very many different shapes and sizes. For many women, it can last as few as 21 days, and for others, it can last as many as 35 days. But there is an arbitrary number of 28 days used to calculate cycles. This does not mean that every woman will have a 28-day cycle, and I will state more on that in the next point in this video. Make sure you keep in mind that periods can vary from 2 to 7 days depending on the woman and her genetics. Periods can be heavy for some women and light for other women. And then, like I said, between the 21 and 35-day range, a woman can fall anywhere in there. So these are some things to keep in mind. Now, there are several reasons why women track their menstrual cycle. The most important one is for you to understand what is unique to you. As previously mentioned, every woman does not have the same cycle. So if you are tracking your cycle, then you begin to understand whether you have a 23-day cycle or a 28-day cycle or wherever you fall on that menstrual spectrum. It is also important for you to track your cycles because if, for instance, you have a situation where one of your months fall off or becomes irregular, then you are able to go back and track to see whether you had symptoms or activities or things of that sort that may have caused that issue. And if those issues do not exist, then you definitely have something to discuss with your provider. Another reason why women should track their period is so that they can know when they ovulate. A lot of couples use ovulation as a contraceptive measure. For some women, they would love to time their ovulation so that they can enhance the chances of becoming pregnant. For other women, they want to decrease or completely eliminate the chance of being pregnant. So tracking your ovulation definitely helps you know when to either engage in or abstain from sexual activity. As previously mentioned, ovulation is the release of a mature egg in hopes of fertilization. However, ovulation is not the only thing a woman should pay attention to. Once an egg is ovulated, it is viable or can be fertilized for 12 to 24 hours. After that period, the egg begins to disintegrate and can no longer lead to pregnancy. However, women need to be conscious of the fact that they have something known as a fertile window. And a fertile window is a range of dates where pregnancy is highly likely if sexual intercourse happens. Women need to track their menstrual period so that they know when this window opens and when it closes. This is because sperm can stay alive in a woman's body for upwards of 5 days. Therefore, if you are not trying to conceive, you may need to avoid sexual intercourse during your fertile window, or if you are trying to conceive, then you need to capitalize or maximize your use of your fertile window. The following illustration is meant to provide a visual so that it can better help women understand their menstrual cycle. Keep in mind that this illustration is based on a 28-day cycle. So if your cycle is less than 28 days or more than 28 days, you may need to make some adjustments so that you better capitalize on your fertile window. As can be seen on this calendar, day 1 of the cycle is the beginning of a woman's menstruation. For women who bleed for 7 days, they can chart this accordingly, but if your cycle is lasting less than 7 days, then there is no need to make any adjustments. As you can see, by the time you begin to get around day 8, there is a higher chance of being able to conceive if you participate in sexual activity. As previously mentioned in the video, sperm can live in a woman's body for a great number of days. So individuals who are trying to avoid pregnancy need to start being very cautious with how they approach their partner, starting with around day number 8. As a woman nears day 10, 11, 12, and 13, the chances of pregnancy increases significantly because she has now entered the fertile window. Ovulation is set to take place around day 14 on a 28-day cycle calendar. So if a woman engages in sexual activity from around the 10th to around the 16th, based on a 28-day calendar, there is a really high chance that she can conceive. Now, as previously mentioned, the egg is viable for only about 12 to 24 hours. So as you can see, once you hit that 14th day, which is the probable day of ovulation, the chances of conceiving after that drop drastically and go back to the same chances as days 8 and 9. Now, once you get out of that day, if fertilization did not happen, then of course pregnancy cannot happen. Then you enter the luteal phase of your cycle and begin to prepare for a menstrual period. I forgot to mention that there are 2 phases in your cycle. There is the follicular phase and the luteal phase. A woman conceives during the follicular phase and has her menstrual period or begins to prepare for a menstrual period during the luteal phase. There are 5 changes that a woman may experience in her body to clue her into the fact that she may be nearing ovulation. The first is a change in your basal body temperature. For some women, they will notice that their body temperature increases by 1/2 or 1 degree. Now, some may say this is a very slight change, but women who are very in tune with their body will notice it. Another change is that the woman's discharge will begin to transform from pre-ovulation discharge to ovulation discharge. Pre-ovulation discharge tends to be a lot more mucousy, thick, whitish, and condensed. But as you near ovulation, that discharge becomes thinner and more watery and clear and see-through. So make sure that you are keeping your eye out for changes in your discharge. Another thing is that some women can actually feel their body ovulate. If you are ovulating from the left ovary, you will feel pain in your lower left pelvic area. And if you are ovulating from the right ovary, you will feel pain from the lower right pelvic area. Another change that women will experience is breast tenderness or overall fatigue in their body. If your breast is feeling tender and you are not nearing your menstrual cycle, it is wise to suspect ovulation. Last but certainly not least, the cervix itself changes position as a woman nears ovulation. Initially, the cervix is very high and it's very difficult for women to feel it with the tip of their finger. As you near ovulation, however, the cervix comes down lower into the vaginal space, so that if copulation or sexual intercourse does happen, then that sperm has increased access into a woman's cervix to increase the likelihood of pregnancy. Now, there are certain factors that can affect how regular a woman's period is. For example, if a woman is on any type of birth control, then it can cause her periods to be much prolonged or farther between, or it can stop the periods altogether. It's also important to know that if you come off birth controls, it may take your body some time to re-regulate your hormones before you start seeing regular periods again. Another factor is age. The younger a woman is, the more irregular or longer her periods may last. In fact, when women start to menstruate initially, there's a chance that they may not even be releasing eggs and their uterus is just building up the lining and shedding it. And that is known as an anovulatory period. As a woman begins to approach menopause, her body sort of goes back to what it did when it first started the menstrual cycle, where her periods will last longer, or she will go longer periods between periods before she reaches the point where she's not even getting periods at all. Also, moms who are breastfeeding or women who have just recently given birth may have a protective factor because breastfeeding sort of delays the release of hormones that encourage the uterus to release an egg and start back the cycle process. But this is not foolproof. So make sure that you are not using breastfeeding as your only contraceptive measure. Other things like a woman's diet or how much exercise she is participating in can also affect her cycle. Women who are not eating a healthy enough diet or have a diet that is high in fat, or women who are extremely thin or extremely heavy may have menstrual irregularities. Women who exercise a lot can reach a point in their body where they don't even see menstrual periods at all. Certain diseases can also affect a woman's cycle. For instance, women with fibroids or pelvic inflammatory disease can experience heavier bleeding than is typical during a menstrual cycle. Also, women with PCOS or polycystic ovarian syndrome and women with endometriosis can either have periods where they don't have a menstrual cycle, or they can get menstrual cycles too frequently because their uterus or tissue from the uterus is implanted in different parts of the body and it's stimulating too frequently, leading to irregular bleedings. There are certain things that women need to report to their doctor or get checked out as soon as possible if they experience it, and that includes unusual bleeding. Say, for instance, your bleeding is regular and all of a sudden you get heavy bleeding, your doctor needs to know that that needs to be further examined. Also, if you are bleeding for more than 7 days, or your period all of a sudden starts and ends in a day where your normal cycle lasts like 3 or 4 days, you also want to call that to your healthcare provider's attention. If you are bleeding between periods, where your normal cycle is a 28-day cycle, but all of a sudden you're bleeding on day 12 or on day 14, you definitely want your provider to know about that. Also, if you notice that you are experiencing really high fevers with your period, or you are starting to feel sickness symptoms that you typically don't see in your menstrual period, make sure you call that out to your provider. That needs more exploration. Now, if you have learned something from the content of this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and join this growing community of empowered learners. Also, make sure to share this video with somebody who you believe can learn something from it. And I wish you all success as you navigate your menstrual and pregnancy journey. Until the next time, be blessed.